Jack Clark, a weary truck driver disillusioned with life, had long lost his passion for work and the sense of freedom on the open road. Debts, endless hauls, and loneliness had become his constant companions. But one night on an empty highway, he encountered a strange old man standing by the roadside. This unexpected meeting, which began with a simple act of kindness, became the start of a journey that would change Jack's life forever. Jack Clark, a seasoned truck driver who had spent the last 20 years on the roads of the Midwest, had lost his spark for life. He once loved the freedom his job provided: empty highways at dawn, radio stations playing old hits, and the feeling that endless possibilities lay ahead. But in recent years, filled with routine, mounting debts, and loneliness, the burden had started to weigh on him, a weight he couldn't escape behind the wheel. Now, as he drove his old truck down a deserted road in Kansas, it seemed to him that every mile was another step into a dead end where there was no room for dreams or rest. Since childhood, Jack had been the kind who believed in honest work and the simple joys of life. He was proud of his ability to handle a machine, made friends in every small town, and was always ready to lend a hand. But now his once cozy little house on the outskirts of a town in Ohio seemed to have become a trap. Bills piled up, truck repairs consumed all his savings, and the job he once considered his calling had turned into an endless wheel from which there was no escape. Behind the wheel, he felt like he was in a cage with no exit, and every new assignment seemed only to bring him closer to collapse. Today's haul followed an old route, and Jack knew it practically by heart. A thick fog enveloped the road, and the flickering light of distant headlights seemed the only sign of life on this empty highway. He glanced at the clock. 4 a.m, the time when even the radio is silent, and his only company is his own thoughts. A familiar Johnny Cash song played in his ears, and for a moment, Jack felt that this road was like a symbol of his entire life, long, lonely, and leading nowhere he had dreamed. Clutching the steering wheel, he wondered what had gone wrong. Maybe he needed to drop everything and do something else, or find another job. But all his savings and health were invested in this truck, this job, and changing his usual rhythm seemed impossible now. A heavy sigh escaped his chest as he tried to quell his anxiety, but thoughts of hopelessness returned, just like the hum of the road beneath the wheels. And suddenly, piercing the darkness, Jack noticed a figure on the side of the road. Through the night fog, the silhouette of an elderly man appeared, standing in the darkness, wrapped in a thin coat. Jack didn't immediately understand why he stopped. Maybe it was something in the old man's eyes, a desperate plea, wordlessly read in his gaze. Jack slowed down and then, overcoming his internal resistance, pulled over to the side of the road. He couldn't shake the feeling that at this hour it was better not to pick up anyone, especially on a deserted highway. But something about the old man was compelling. The man, wrapped in a thin coat, approached the cab and tapped on the glass, smiling slightly as if he knew Jack would pick him up anyway. Jack rolled down the window and, suppressing a sudden wave of doubt, asked, "Where can I give you a lift to, old-timer?" The old man quietly thanked him, and after naming the name of a village, leaned back in the seat as if he had been walking along that road for hours. The place's name seemed unfamiliar to Jack, but he decided not to ask. It wasn't uncommon in these parts to come across small, barely existing settlements he would pass on his routes. "So, looks like we've got a long journey ahead," Jack said, driving the truck forward and trying to maintain light, meaningless conversation. But the elderly man remained silent, only occasionally nodding in response, and Jack felt there was something strange yet inexplicably attractive about his presence. The silence in the cab became almost palpable until the old man suddenly asked, "What's weighing on your mind, son? Seems like heavy thoughts are pressing down on you." Jack flinched. The question caught him off guard. It was as if the old man had read all his worries in a single glance. He hesitated, but something in the tone and calm presence of his passenger inspired trust, and to his own surprise, Jack began to talk. He shared how he was stuck in a pit of debt, how the job that once brought him joy now only increased his sense of emptiness, and how fear of change kept him in place despite the exhausting routine. The old man listened silently, occasionally nodding, and when Jack finished, he said, as if he had known him for a long time, "It's hard when the past won't let go and burdens you with its loads. Sometimes to find your path, you need not fear letting go of old fears, the ones that keep you stuck." Jack looked at him in surprise. Those words touched something deep inside, as if the old man saw not just him, but all the doubts that kept him in this endless loop. "You talk as if you know more about me than I do myself," Jack muttered, smiling slightly, feeling his wariness give way to a strange calm. "Everyone has their own road, son, and yours might lead to things you can't even imagine, if only you dare to make a change," the old man replied softly, looking straight ahead as if he saw not the road but something much farther. Jack said nothing, but his thoughts, usually clear and familiar, mingled into a whimsical tangle of doubts and hopes. As they drove on, the night road stretched before them like an endless ribbon, and the conversation with the old man seemed to dissolve space and time. When the truck's headlights illuminated the first crooked sign bearing the village's name, the old man suddenly became animated and asked Jack to stop at a small pull-off by the road. Jack pressed the brakes, even though he didn't see a single house nearby. Only the dense shadows of trees surrounded them, and the night wind barely whispered through the branches. Silence hung in the cabin, and Jack was about to ask if the old man was sure this was where he wanted to be dropped off, when the man suddenly reached into his pocket and pulled out something that, in the dim glow of the headlights, appeared to Jack to be a small envelope sealed with a thick black seal. The old man looked intently at Jack, as if seeing right through him, and extended the envelope. "Take it, son," he said softly, with a smile that held a mysterious blend of understanding and care. "Open it exactly 3 days from now. No sooner." Jack frowned, looking at the envelope, not knowing what to think. He felt an unexpected unease and a slight chill in his stomach, but something deep inside suggested that this envelope was not just a curious object, but something important, as if destined for him. 3 days from now?" Jack repeated, almost laughing, trying to hide his inner turmoil. "What's this all about?" The old man smiled quietly, lowering his eyes, as if anticipating Jack's surprise. "Just follow your heart, Jack," he said, as if sharing something very personal. "It knows where you're meant to be." Jack nodded, looking into those eyes wise with years, and carefully took the envelope, not daring to break the integrity of the black seal. In the next moment, the old man opened the cabin door, jumped to the ground and stepped back, dissolving into the night's darkness as if he were part of the silence and gloom that surrounded them. Jack barely had time to blink before the figure vanished from sight, leaving neither a trace on the dusty roadside nor a sound of footsteps. Left alone, Jack looked at the envelope in his hand, feeling a strange emptiness and slight regret for letting him go. Holding the sealed envelope, he sat motionless for a while longer, as if expecting the old man to return. 3 days later, early in the morning, Jack finally decided to open the envelope that had been lying on his bedside table, drawing his gaze like some mystery left by fate. The thought flashed that he had opened it many times in his mind, imagining hundreds of different scenarios. But now, as he held it in his hands, his heart began to beat faster. He carefully tore the edge, trying not to damage the fragile seal that seemed to hold something more than just paper. When Jack pulled out the letter, he immediately noticed that the handwriting was neat and tidy, with graceful, almost old-fashioned letters. He began to read, and as the old man's words appeared before his eyes, everything inside him turned upside down. There was something personal, unsettling, almost prophetic in the letter. "Jack," the letter began, "if you are reading this now, it means you are ready for the changes you've long awaited but feared. Life sometimes throws us challenges so we can grow from them, but, as I have understood, your fears have become your chains." Jack held his breath, astonished by the accuracy of these words. The old man seemed to know everything. His fear of change, the sense of hopelessness that had shackled him for years, and all those dreams that once meant everything to him but were forgotten over time, frozen in the depths of his disappointments. The old man reminded him of a time when Jack genuinely loved the open road and life itself, when he considered himself capable of something more. It was as if he saw in Jack the person he himself had once lost due to all his failures. The letter continued. "The address below will lead you to where a new path awaits. In Chicago, there is someone you can find. He will understand your problems, just as I have, and offer what may become the beginning of your new life. But remember, this is only an opportunity. You will have to take the step yourself." At the bottom, an address was written in neat handwriting, a large company in Chicago's business district. Jack blinked, rereading the lines over and over, feeling his confidence mix with doubt. The address, the company, the unknown contact, all of it seemed unreal, like something that only happens in movies or books. "This is impossible," he whispered to himself. "Such things just don't happen." And yet he couldn't shake the feeling that this letter was meant for him. Every time he tried to brush it off, his thoughts returned to the old man's words. He sat in silence for a few more minutes, feeling as if his entire life boiled down to this choice. A struggle flared up inside him. Part of him wanted to throw away the letter, considering it just another hoax, but another part, filled with remnants of hope, quietly told him that it wouldn't always be this way. Finally, Jack took a deep breath, stood up, and gathering his courage, reached for his truck keys. Deciding to follow this mysterious advice, he knew the journey to Chicago would be long, but this time something told him that his road truly led to something greater. In the morning, Jack, tired after a long night's drive, pulled up to a tall glass building in Chicago's business district. He stood at the entrance, hesitant to go in, feeling out of place. Among the crisp suits and confident faces of passers-by, he, in his worn jeans and leather jacket, felt like an outsider. Looking at the address in the letter, he once again confirmed that he had arrived at the right place, although his heart still pounded with anxiety, as if he had stepped into another world. Gathering his courage, he entered the lobby, immediately surrounded by the sounds and smells of a large office. The soft murmur of conversations, ringing phones, the aroma of coffee and fresh paper. Jack approached the reception desk, and a woman in a formal business suit, seeing him, smiled as if she had been expecting him. "Mr. Clark?" she said in a warm voice that left no doubt of her confidence. Jack nodded, astonished that she recognized him. "Please follow me," she said, gesturing toward the elevator. Still not understanding what was happening, Jack followed her. The elevator quickly lifted them to one of the upper floors, where a panoramic view of the city unfolded before Jack. He felt part of something enormous, but was even more amazed when he saw that he was already expected in the office. Several employees in suits approached him, smiling and greeting him like an old friend. "We're glad you came, Mr. Clark," one of the men said, extending his hand. "We've heard a lot about you." Jack was stunned but returned the handshake, feeling simultaneously lost and somehow at home. He was invited to sit in a spacious office overlooking the lake. The atmosphere was surprisingly friendly, and Jack felt he was being treated with respect, as if he had been part of this company for many years. One of the employees, a man with glasses and a reserved smile, sat across from him and began to speak. "Mr. Clark, the man you once gave a ride to, that old man is our founder and owner, Mr. Hayes. He is known to occasionally travel incognito. He enjoys meeting people on equal terms, without all the business masks and pretense. He believes that acts of kindness are the true currency in this world." Jack listened, not believing his ears. It turned out that the old man he had picked up on a cold night on a deserted road was not just a hitchhiker, but a man of influence, the owner of a large company, someone who sought those capable of genuine kindness. This revelation overwhelmed him, and the quiet voice of the old man echoed in his head. "Follow your heart." The man continued, noticing Jack's confusion. "Mr. Hayes rarely offers such an opportunity to people, but you made an impression on him. He sees you as someone he can trust, who expects nothing in return. That's why we're offering you a job here at the company, with the chance to start a new life, a job that, I am sure, will give you the fresh start you've been seeking for so long." Jack sat, feeling a mix of joy and bewilderment growing inside him. He didn't know what to say. He had been offered not just a job, but a chance to be part of something important. Now, everything he knew about himself and his life seemed so small compared to this moment. Several months had passed since Jack began his new job at the company, and each day was a revelation for him. What had once seemed impossible now became reality. His position in the logistics and transportation department required the experience he had accumulated over years on the road, and, to his surprise, it was valued here. Managers listened to his advice, and soon he became not just an employee but someone they relied on, who could offer his own ideas. For the first time in many years, Jack felt that his efforts and knowledge truly mattered. With each passing month, his financial situation improved. The company offered him a good salary, which allowed him not only to cover current expenses, but also to start gradually paying off accumulated debts. Jack no longer fell asleep with anxiety or woke up wondering how to make ends meet. The burden he had carried for so many years began to lift, like a heavy load he could finally leave behind. Now, returning home in the evenings, he noticed the little things he hadn't seen before: the sunset over the city, the warm lights in the windows of homes, the quiet sounds of the streets that no longer filled him with melancholy but brought him peace. However, the changes weren't just financial. Jack felt that something deeper was happening within him. Previously, he had lived as if watching life through a pane of glass, not fully participating in it. But now he had found new energy and purpose. He wanted to help others just as he had once been helped. He noticed how he became more responsive and attentive to the people around him. It seemed that the feeling of kindness with which he had once picked up the old man had now become part of himself. One evening, returning home, Jack stopped at a gas station. While he was pumping gas, a young man, confused and seemingly troubled, approached him and asked if Jack could give him a ride to the nearest town. Jack, recalling his encounter with the old man for a moment, smiled and nodded. He no longer hesitated as he once did. There was room in his heart to help. When Jack dropped the young man off on the outskirts of town and saw the gratitude in his eyes, he felt a quiet, warm feeling spread in his chest. Now he knew that sometimes these seemingly insignificant acts are the true meaning of life. He realized that the night conversation with Mr. Hayes, because now he knew the true name of his passenger, was not a coincidence. In that moment, Jack had made a choice, and it changed everything. Looking up at the evening sky, Jack felt a spark of new hope and joy igniting within him, similar to the light that had burned in his heart in his youth. He was no longer a prisoner of circumstances. He was creating his own future.